So if you're at home and all you have is a Chromebook or an iPad and you can't get Lantern, then this is going to be the next best thing. I've tried to follow up with the computers. No one will talk to me. I don't know what's going on with that. So instead of actually coding out the game in Lantern, you do have at this point a map and a design document. What you're going to do is take your design document and turn it into a technical design document. This is where you're going to specify out the functions in your game and what they are going to have to do. So let's just pop over to Lantern real fast here. And where is everything? Too many things open. All right, here's Lantern. So this is that space station game, Heinlein Station. Let's take a look at the functions and the sentences. Now, if you don't know what functions, sentences, events, and variables are, go back and watch the tutorials so that you do know what they are. So here are the functions for that project. And you can see there's a fair number of them. What you're going to do is list out your functions and what they do. So here, if there's an examine panel function, when you examine the panel, it would say, okay, it's going to print line. The hinged panel is labeled communications, and then it's going to print out the contents of the panel. All right, so that's a silly example, but okay, fix the radio. Okay, so print line, the S100 COM board has already been repaired. So what you're going to do is write up a table that says, okay, I need these little functions, and here's what they're going to do. So let's take a look at some of these functions. Like, where's the one where I have to throw the salt at the slug? Okay, there's a kill slug function, and it's going to print out the slug explodes in a violent maelstrom of squishy goo. Then it's going to flag that the slug has been killed, add 20 points to my score, and move the slug and the salt off screen. So that's what you would put in your technical design document. You know, for if you were writing a kill slug function, you'd say the function will print out the message, the slug explodes in a violent maelstrom of squishy goo. It flags that the slug has been killed, adds 20 points to the score, and then removes the slug and the salt from the world, or moves them off screen. You're going to express in English what you want that function to do, and then hopefully at some point you'll be able to turn that English into code. Now, the functions just sort of live by themselves. They get run when the user types a sentence, right? So you're going to have to list out your sentences, and we'll look at a sample design doc here. So here's a sentence: throw small white cube at giant space slug. And when I do that, call the kill slug function. That's what that means. Arrow, 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 right? Call the kill slug function. So there's a linkage between the player typing in this sentence and that function. When the player types in this, that function gets run. So let's just pop over to the design doc and take a look. So what I've got here in my example design doc is, if I throw the salt at the giant space slug, call the throw salt at slug function, which actually turned out to be the kill slug function. So this is, if the player types this, call this function and run that code. So you're going to list out all of the things, the sentences that your game is going to need, and what functions they're going to call. How do you know what your game is going to need? Well, let's go back to Lantern. In your design doc, you have a walkthrough, right? Where is it? Testing. Here's your walkthrough. Take note, read note, north, east, south, open locker, wear suit, north, west, west, push button. So what you want to do is look through all those commands in your design doc that the player is going to have to type in to beat the game, and you're going to look for ones that require special handling. So taking things does not require special handling, but reading things does. You're going to have to add read as a verb and make a function called read note. Opening a locker, you can open and close containers. The game understands that. It understands wearing the suit. But push button, the game doesn't know anything about pushing buttons. So you're going to have to write a function called push button, or I will, right? Or I did. Same thing here. Now, turns out these are actually two different buttons in two different locations. Open dryer, again, opening and closing containers, does not require special handling. Take underwear, does not require special handling. Examining something does not require special handling. What does, though? take jar, nope. Open jar, nope. Take cube, nope. Okay, so push the button. This is another opening the airlock thing. Pushing a button, there's no built-in behavior for that. You're gonna have to add it. And finally, let's see, throw cube at slug, right? Or, that's throw the salt at the slug. The game doesn't understand, like the underlying engine does not know anything about throwing cubes at slugs, right? So that's going to be a sentence right there. The sentence would be the verb, first noun, preposition, second noun, and then if the player types this, call the kill slug function. And then putting the comment board in the slot, that doesn't really require any special handling, but using the radio does, because the game engine does not understand the verb use. So you would have to you have to look through your sentence list that the player's going to type and look for ones that require special handling, things that that work a particular way in your particular game. So taking things, examining things, putting things in other things, manipulating containers, that is not something you have to worry about. But anything, killing the alien, activating the teleporter, digging with the shovel, those are not things the game understands. You will have to write those. You will have to write sentences that call functions. So let's go back to that document and just review. So what I've got here is I've gone through my walkthrough and I've looked at the functions or the commands that are going to require special casing. So when the player tries to read the note, it'll call the read note function. When the player pushes button 19, which is the button in the airlock 1, it'll call the open airlock 1 function. When the player pushes button 21, which is the button in the second airlock, it'll call the open airlock 2 function. And then I've got my throw salt at slug, call the kill slug function. Now what happens if the player tries to throw something else at the slug, like throw the comm board or throw the jar at the slug? Well, that would be throw anything else at the giant space slug, then call this function. All right, so let's go look at the functions here. Let's scroll down. So here's our functions. Read note, print out the text written on the note, the backstory. Okay, open airlock 1. If airlock 1 is open, close it. If airlock 1 is closed, open it. Print out a message that the airlock is opening or closing, then change the room connections appropriately, right? So this is the code, right? This is the code that is going to make the airlock work. Throw the salt at the slug. Print the slug explodes in a maelstrom of squishy goo. Move the slug off screen, then set the variable slug killed to 1. Now we know that the slug, and add 20 points to the score. All right, so then so that's what you've got here. Events are functions that run every turn. You can use them to calculate score, move NPCs around, burn down, consume resources. That is what events are for. So if you have anything that needs to be handled in an event, you can list out your events here. Checks, most games usually only have like a handful of checks that beyond the built-in ones. So in this game, if you try to move east, you need to check to make sure that the slug isn't there, because if the giant slug's there, you're not allowed to move east. So what this does is it says, okay, before you move east, check to see if it's safe to go east. And if the slug's in the same room as you, print the giant space slug blocks your way. So that's what checks are for. Checks are run before the sentences to determine whether or not you should run the sentences at all, right? So like example, if you want to try to take something, there's a default check to make sure that it's portable. And if it's not portable, it says you can't pick that up, or that's not portable or something. Variables. If you need special variables in your game, particularly for keeping track of whether the player's done things for the purpose of scoring, you can add that in this section too. So here I've said there's a variable called slug killed, and it starts off being 0. This variable will get set to 1 when we kill the slug. That way, we know not to keep giving the player points for the slug. So the variables are just there to help you keep track of the state of your game. So what you want to do is put together a document like this that goes through you want to look at your design doc and figure out, okay, what commands are the player going to type that require special handling. Then you're going to make a table of those and create a function for each one to call. Then down here in the function table, you are going to provide the name of that function and exactly what that function does with enough detail that you could give this to somebody else and they could code it. And then that's it. The same thing for your events. Events, as I said, are just functions that run every turn for doing things like sometimes they compute scores, sometimes they can open and close doors or move NPCs around, make things happen in your game, things that are related to timing or resources being consumed. And then also list any checks, special checks your game is going to need. This is particularly, this comes up particularly when you have an enemy that blocks a particular way out of the room. If I'm trying to go east, make sure I'm not, I'm not in the room with the troll, because the troll will block me. That kind of thing. Or if I try to enter the, the vent, check to see that I'm not carrying too much stuff before, and that's what the checks are for. And then variables, if you think you will need variables, you can list those out here. So what you want is a technical design document that's got enough detail in it that you could hand this to somebody else and they could code your game. So that's it. There's a blank one out there. If you are at home and all you have is a Chromebook or an iPad and you cannot get Lantern, this is the only other alternative I can think of. If you have any questions on this, ask for help. Ask Trey for help. Conference with us. We want to make sure you're on the right track. We're running out of time here, and I want to make sure that everybody gets to turn something in. And if we do, hopefully get everybody back in the classroom, then you can take this design document and actually implement it and end up with a working game.